Well, hey there. Um, so I think I'll just preface this by saying it's been a while. It's been a good while since I've actually updated this guide, but I'm gonna keep doing it every few months as I improve and as I play this game. But this is this is going to be my guide on how to play the 3 different variants of Untamed. And I'm going to talk about weapon variation, which will be, I'm going to probably cover Mace on a few of the different versions. I'm also going to be going on a few things about the utilities. So, let's get into the aerodrome. You got a monster, so I'm nice and caffeinated. So, I'm going to start off with probably the easiest version of Untamed to learn, which is probably going to be Quick DPS Untamed. So Quick DPS Untamed is the easiest because it's just weapon swapping a lot. You don't have to worry too much about skills, and you'll be hitting some really nice DPS. The traits that you're probably going to want are going to look something more closer to this. You also have a few options if you really feel like changing, like you can go Moment of Clarity, Remorseless if you really need it, but this is what they use for DPS Untamed. You can just kind of change Let Loose. Change your Ferocious Symbiosis to Let Loose. This is what the trait that we're going to be using for DPS Untamed, and Let Loose, which is the quickness trait, is what we're going to be using for both of the other builds, because both of them need it for quickness. So, for gear, you can generally go Berserker. If you need more uptime, you can grab Diviners. I don't usually go Diviners, but it's pretty nice. I also sometimes go Diviners on my Amulet. I forgot to change it back because I was doing quick for some groups. Believe that we'll just talk about Hammer Sword Axe for now. So DPS has a few things in its arsenal that makes it work really well. Mainly because of how much versatility you have with your pets and how you can very easily make basically everything work. Like, the Stinky was I think it's my juvenile jungle stalker, gives might. My tiger gives fury. The Fernhound gives regen. The white tiger gives Aegis if you need it, and then you have a few other ways, like, you have one that just straight up does 300 CC. Then you have a bunch of other CC pets, which we'll go over into, alongside just general CC options. So for Quick Untamed, the rotation is it's pretty easy. There's not much to really talk about for the rotation, but one of the things that you may want to do is, as you get better, I like to begin, or as I'm learning, you can start with all of your stuff on the pet. So like you can just leave the pet auto attacks on. So then you're providing your might, you're providing your fury, and then you're also proccing that fury when you do Lesser Call of the Wild, which you should be pet swapping as much as possible, since it provides a lot of boons. For damage, you have a few ways that you can do it. This is just power DPS Untamed setup, which usually you'll actually change some stuff out. I believe it goes something like this, because this is more fury uptime and just more CC. So Untamed has something cool with its hammer. Your hammer has 2 different variations of its skills, which one is purely damage focused. So the green ones, also known as the unleashed versions of your skills, are generally pure damage without any utility. But when you go into the normal versions, they're mostly CC focused, For example, you have one that does 225cc, a bunch of barrier, and then you have one that does 200cc and is a blast finisher. So you're certainly not lacking on CC, just on that alone. Now if you do need more, you have a few options. You can bring your Rock Gazelle, which is about 400 if you proc both. And then you also have the Electric Wyvern, which I do not currently have. I was kind of lazy about it, so I didn't go ahead and get it. You also have Boon Corruption now, which is kind of crazy. So if an enemy needs its boons corrupted, you can go ahead and grab the Spine Gazer if you have Soto. This is a Spine Gazer. Hold up. This guy. This absolute monstrosity. Although they're a lot more Condi focused with its skills. But for now, we're gonna stick with the basics and go with the Juvenile Jungle Stalker and the Tiger. So what do we do? How do we keep up our quickness? How do we even start? Well, one of the first things to learn is to learn to weapon swap. I'm not kidding, weapon swapping is the most important thing. Because if you don't weapon swap consistently, then you're kind of out of quickness. So you don't really actually have to do much of a rotation if you don't want to min-max all your DPS. So like you can start off, which you should always start off in Unleash Ranger, use all of these skills off cooldown. So use your skills, use your Frost Trap, go into your Unleash, and then use your Unleash. Use blah 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 skills, weapon swap, and every time you unleash, it'll provide quickness. So you see, you can kind of just weapon swap and button mash. And then before you leave to go to another weapon, you want to unleash back into your pet, and then go back into Ranger, so that you can proc another unleash before you leave. So see how I just changed back into, so go into pet and come back into Ranger. And then if you want to, after, you can also just straight up stay in pet if you really feel like it. So we're not providing much for might or for might, but if you're really on top of it, you'll be able to provide a lot more. If we go ahead and grab a lack though, see how much we're also doing damage wise? We are doing 21,000 just by what we're providing by ourselves. So the biggest thing, again, just practice your weapon swapping. It also will help a lot when you're doing qheal untamed, because qheal untamed is very weapon swappy too, because it follows the same thing. So every single time you unleash, every single time you ambush, you gain quickness. So make sure you're ambushing, weapon swapping, and also hitting those making sure that you're hitting those unleashes before you leave. It's pretty nice. Or at least it'll make it it'll help you with your muscle memory. Now on DPS Untamed, it's a little bit different. DPS Untamed has a few different variations, but I'll just be talking about the normal version. For quick DPS Untamed, you can also bring Relic of the Fireworks. I kind of forgot to. Relic of the Dragon Hunter is pretty awesome, and it's what we're going to be using for Power DPS Untamed. Power DPS Untamed has a different kind of theme with a lot of its stuff. So Power DPS Untamed just kind of focuses on making sure that you're proccing stacks of Ferocious Symbiosis, which it has a few different ways to do it, but once you get up to 5 stacks of Ferocious Symbiosis, which is about 25% damage, it's really easy to keep it up as long as you remember to use your pet skills off cooldown, or at least your unleash pet skills off cooldown. Also, your ranger unleashes do a stack of it too. So see how that did one, and like so your unleash skills, your pet unleash skills will also add some ferocious. See how we're getting stacks of Ferocious Symbiosis, and then it gets refreshed whenever you unleash. So remember, use all of your skills, all of these off cooldown, use your unleash off cooldown. Now for the actual rotation, it is slightly different, or it has something a bit different in some ways. You're going to want to use Flame Trap to begin, and then as you're casting Flame Trap, or even before you cast Flame Trap, you can use your F1, F2, F3 skills for your pet, and then that'll build your stacks of Ferocious Symbiosis, while Flame Trap will go ahead and proc a stack of Relic, will proc Relic of the Dragon Hunter, and then you'll go ahead and use your Pounce, your Serpent Strike, and your Path of Scars, which is your 2, 3, 4. And then after you do that, you're going to Frost Trap, and then use your Whirling Defense, which will be your 5. So we'll start off with that. So since you're going to be doing DPS, you're also going to have all the boons on you, so, or at least a lot of the boons. You're not going to have all of them, but it's just kind of for showing's sake right now. So let's start. Flame Trap, F1, F2, F3, Unleash, 2, 3, 4, Frost Trap, 5. And then you're going to do you're going to do 2 combos of your auto attack. Use your 2 and your 3 again. And then you should weapon swap into your Hammer Unleash, but I forgot to weapon swap. And then while you're in Hammer, you just kind of remember that you have to proc your stuff. Use 2, 4, and 5. And then same thing when you get back into Sword X. So you're also going to want to be casting Flame Trap and Frost Trap off cooldown. Don't have them up at the same time because they don't stack really. So yeah, just make sure you are casting at least one of your traps off cooldown. So if you're really being min-maxy, you can like place a Flame Trap, and then once that's off cooldown, or at least once that finishes proccing, you place a Frost Trap. And then once Frost Trap is done, place a Flame Trap. And then just keep on hitting that. So for a little bit of self-sustain, you have a few options. If you're in a group, you can bring Healing Spring for Condi Cleanse. If you need to bypass or just straight up ignore some mechanics, Perilous Gift is really nice because it just completely destroys any amount of damage you take for 3 seconds. Now you can also do the same thing with Stone Signet, but you don't really want to change these 3 skills when you're doing DPS Untamed. DPS Untamed, a lot of your damage is usually coming from your traps. Oh, there's also something to talk about pets real quick. So, I believe the best pet you can actually bring is your tiger. I believe it's because it just does a lot of really nice damage, and also you still get the fury. There's also the bleeding damage that you do, so it's really nice for what it is. I believe, also from what I remember, this thing, the Arid Devourer or Carrion Devourer is really good when you're starting off. So you can start off with your Carrion Devourer, and then use your Poisonous Cloud while you do everything, and then you can swap into your Tiger and let it just maul the enemy. So yep, that's about it for DPS Untamed. Really quickly, for both of those, it's still Berserkers. There's a few different runes that you can use. I have Rune of the Scholar. There's one of them called Rune of the Golemancer. Here. Rune of the Golemancer. I'm gonna close this out. Rune of the Golemancer is another really nice one. There's also Rune of the Eagle. which is able to do a lot of precision and ferocity. Another really expensive one is Rune of the Dragon Hunter, which, if you can do that, is another really good choice. So you have a few different ways that you can go about it. And the cheapest ones would probably be these strength runes, which is just straight up raw power and might duration, but you're gonna want Rune of the Eagle above that, so it's worth it to take that cost. It's only 1 gold for the 6 runes, and it's pretty worth it. There isn't much for trait variation. You should generally just be running something like this because you just do so much damage. You want to keep Wolfsong and Predator's Onslaught because Predator's Onslaught 15% raw damage increase. Wolfsong 10% damage increase against vulnerable enemies. Pretty nice. Clarion Bond is a blast finisher, provides a bunch of fury, might, and swiftness. So it's pretty nice. If you want to be selfish, I guess you can bring Hunter's Gaze, but you should generally keep Clarion Bond. Yeah. This middle trait you can also change out sometimes depending on what you need. Corrupting Vines is really useful for something like Wing 1. So that's really about it for this. And we can really quickly now talk about qheal untamed, which is something that you'd think would be a massive meme, but it is okay. I don't think I'd recommend it over Heal Druid unless you can do a few things. So, really quickly, I want to talk about runes for this one, because healer runes are a little bit difficult to get sometimes. I have Rune of the Dolyak in, but usually you're going to want to be running Relic of the Monk. I mean, not Relic, but Runes of the Monk. So, as you can see, with all your monk runes, let me figure out, there we go. With all your monk runes, you have 50, I believe that's 250 healing. 275 healing, possibly, I'm not sure. And with pure Harriers, you are currently at 90% boon duration with my setup. Let's talk about the setup and just generally what you might want to run in general. It's a pretty simple yet complex build. You're running all Harriers on everything, and if you need to tank, you can swap into like Givers, which is what I have here, but I'm going to swap that back to Harriers. I would not recommend using anything other than Relic of the Flock or Relic of the Monk or Duena. Relic of Duena is like if you're trying to be really lazy about it, but you can get away with Relic of the Flock or Relic of the Monk really easily. Another one that's really solid, which I don't have, is Relic of Caracosa, because you have Oaken Cudgel, which procs blast finishers. You have Call of the Wild, which is a blast finisher. And then if you bring Healing Spring, which is a really nice regen bringer, you also have another blast finisher. And then I believe both of these can proc it. So, like, if I just kind of do this, that also procs a bunch. So we're going to remove the boons from everybody. Let me clear this, because I think my pet got some of my boons, which it should not have. Yep, there we go. I should get rid of its boons soon. So, boon application here is about the same as the last one, except that it's slightly different. We're still using the thing where we're trying to focus on hitting as many unleashes as possible, because it provides a bunch of quickness and might, which is really nice. So, we're kind of just... It also... our unleashes are our big heal skills. they're going to be doing a majority of the healing, especially if you unleash in your staff, which does a bunch of overtime healing. So your boons and just how you're going to provide them. We can get into the traits for that. We're bringing nature magic, untamed. You have a few different options for up here. I just kind of have beast mastery for the funnies, but usually you're gonna want to be running marksmanship for clarion bond, and then you can kind of run whatever you want otherwise. So it'll probably tell you to run whichever does the most damage. So running what we had last time with clarion bond, wolf song, and predator's onslaught for the most CC. So in nature magic, this also will depend on what you run, because you can run 2 staffs. I don't have an offhand staff to bring, but 2 staffs will, at the cost of some protection, your regen, and like a few other boons, especially some CC, you focus heavily on just being able to heal like it's nothing else. So you'll be heavily focusing on healing more than anything if you do that. So now that we've talked about that, nature magic is going to be providing a lot of our boons, because this is mainly focusing on proccing your spirits and clarion bond off cooldown, but there's a few other ways you can go about it. So what I'm using is Wellspring, which is regeneration whenever you use a healing skill. So you have regen on top of regen, which is like instant 10 seconds, excluding what you're going to be proccing whenever you use Flourish, which, boom, regen. So you're also going to be gaining regen from your pet skills, I believe. Beast skills, yeah, so it procs regen around there. Your Warhorn 4 and 5 will also be doing regen, so say I do Warhorn 4, that's regen. Warhorn 5, more regen. So you have 4 skills in total that can proc regen here. Now for your heal skill, you can I like bringing Healing Spring because it works really well with Relic of the Flock, because it's already like 6,000 healing, which it also removes conditions, proccing the regen, and it's also a water combo field. So if you run Relic of Caracosa, you're doing this. Or at least if you hit it. I didn't hit it, and I'm also not in combat, so. One sec. Here we go. Otherwise, so Windborn Notes, which is basically adding that regen to your... It is adding the regen to your 4 and your 5, which are your Warhorn skills. Now, if you don't want to run Warhorn and you want to run Dual Staff, you're going to bring Spirited Arrival with whichever 2 pets you feel like bringing. And for this last one, for your Grandmaster, you have a few different options. I like Nature's Vengeance because I like having the double proccing stuff with my spirits. For example, it would double proc Nature's Renewal, which is a 10-person revive and a 10-person just boon removal. I mean, not boon removal, but it converts the conditions to boons and also adds even more regen uptime if you really need it to do that. But it's basically just a nice revive tool. Now, if you need even more revives, you are certainly not lacking. You can bring Ally's Aid, which is whenever you start reviving an ally, you cast Search and Rescue, which is a skill that makes your pet start reviving that person. So you basically have it 2-for-1 special when you're reviving someone. If you feel like you need those extra revives, say you're like trying to carry a group, then you can go ahead and bring that. It's also why it's so strong for certain groups, like if you're training, it's why you bring Nature Magic with Druid too. So, Nature's Vengeance, the Spirits, 10-person revive, which without Nature's Vengeance, it's only a 1-person revive. I don't usually actually use that one. It basically just makes it so that your pet guards your allies and takes damage for them. So if you're maybe like bringing a bear, which if you're bringing the bear, you go Beast Mastery, and then it has 80,000 health, and it can tank everything like it's nothing. But usually you stay inside of marksmanship. And then you have Invigorating Bond, which is protection and vigor, alongside a lot of healing anytime you swap your pet. So if you're focusing on pure healing, you run something like these three, I believe. It is, which guarantees the most healing out of most of it, other than... No, I seem to be right. So those are your general trait options. I'll be talking about both Invigorating Bond and the Nature's Vengeance version. So the stuff we'll be bringing, real quick, are Healing Spring for Condi Cleanse, Frost Spirit just because it's really nice and also adds even more Condi Cleanse, which is going to be something like 6 Condi Cleans in a small bit. You're also providing Resolution and Resistance for a short time. Stone Spirit, which is a big Aegis and protection bringer, and I'm not really sure how it works, but it also blast finishers, and Sun Spirit, which is a big bringer of a lot of might, especially because you're bringing Nature's Vengeance. So, boom, one of those, and then just 8 might on its own. So, pretty nice. It also does a little bit of burning damage. And then we're bringing Spirit of Nature for even more for the revives, and because it's just really strong. If you need to mobilize, say you're in Wing 1 and you're fighting Gorseval and you're doing like, say you're doing the healer usual where you're just entangling and keeping the stuff away from the group, you can bring Entangle, which is a really nice bit of a mobilize. So, but since we don't really have better other than these two, we'll be bringing Spirit of Nature. So there isn't really a rotation for healers usually. It's mostly just using certain skills off cooldown. And some of the skills you really want to save. You want to save Healing Spring and Stone Spirit. Stone Spirit mainly because it does a lot of Aegis, or at least it'll be your main source of Aegis in case you need it. Healing Spring is a massive source of Condi Cleanse. Like I think it's like 10 cleanses in one skill, which is crazy. Really quickly, we can also go ahead and test. I usually like to just button mash inside the extremely threatening field. But it's pretty easy to just kind of go in, blast everything. See, oh yeah, you also have even more, you have even more immobilized with your staff 4, which is pretty awesome. So your quickness still comes from your unleashes, so you're going to be wanting to weapon swap, and anytime you see the unleash symbol down here, you're going to swap back into Unleash Ranger. If you feel like it, you can stay inside Unleash Pet. So like, I weapon swap, get out of Unleash Pet, go back in. Now you can also, while you're outside Unleash Pet, you can go ahead and proc your pet skills. So I'm just kind of button mashing without thinking. Just casting everything off cooldown, and you're providing boons. So inside of staff, I like to use 5-2-4 and then hit my unleash before I weapon swap. So unleash, weapon swap, unleash. Use all of my skills while I'm in here. And then with your mace, proc your nature strength. So use all of your... Try and get a nature force of nature proc before you get out, and then, as usual, hit your unleash. So that's about it for the main thing. You're also doing a pretty good bit of damage, as you can see, but you're providing a really nice bit of like everything. Now, in case you need more, I actually really like this pet, or at least I find it really helpful. But it is the juvenile blue moa, mainly because it's doing protection, and you have a heal skill for about 3,000 health. If you need extra CC, as usual, you can bring the rock gazelle, you can bring the electric wyvern. If you need boon corruption, you can bring the spine gazer. I also believe there's a few other ones that do boon corruption, but I'm not sure. If you need more Aegis, make sure that you're bringing your white tiger. There's also another one that's really nice. I believe the turtle is a really good one to have because it does 400 something CC, and then you can use your bunker, does regen, does some protection. It's really nice. And if you need more might and fury, you can bring your juvenile jungle stalker for might, and then bring your tiger for fury. It also helps keep your damage up. So yeah. So that's kind of about it for most of the versions of Untamed that I know about. There are a few variations for weapons. For example, when you're playing I believe just either version of Untamed, you can go ahead and bring maces instead of hammer if you just want to do extra boons or something. And because Mace 4 does a CC, not CC, but stability, you'll also have a good time with that with CC, because if you're hitting all of your skills off cooldown, you'll be proccing your Force of Nature with his, which really nice CC. You get about 800 or so while you're in here. It's pretty nice. In the in the case that you need to play Condition Untamed, I won't be talking about that here, but I'd recommend bringing Dagger for its Unleash, because Dagger Torch, really strong. The Dagger Unleash does a really big bunch of like bleeding and poison, so it's great for burst openers and just general condition usage. There are also a few other variations. For example, if you feel like it, you can bring Axe Hammer if you really need it. I don't usually bring Axe for anything other than if I'm playing Soul Beast rather than Untamed. You also have Spear, which is a whole different build because you're focusing on stealth. So you'd be bringing the Arid Devourer and your Jaguar? Yes, your Jaguar. So it'd be focusing more on your Jaguar and hitting the stealth skill in your Jaguar, which is completely different from what you usually focus on in DPS and quick DPS Untamed. So that's really about it for Untamed talk. If there's any other stuff, I may talk about it later. And yeah, see ya.